There it is.
There it is.
Live right here. Hey, tune in again. We're here. Jay Cash has been here for the last week or so in Murfreesboro. I actually got out earlier and went and bought an external microphone at Best Buy, and it was probably the best experience I've ever had. I just ordered it online, and about 15 minutes later, I pulled up to the curb. They brought it out to me, and it couldn't have been any easier. So I don't know if I'll sound any better. Up above me, we've got Shane McCarroll. He is in Adams, Tennessee. And then all the way from Ohio, we got Mike Brandley, auctioneer. And we're going to discuss the next 20 minutes what we think the future of live auctions are going to look like. Mike's notified me that he has a crystal ball, and he actually knows exactly how things are going to look when we get on the other side of this. So, Mike, thanks for joining us. And how are things up in Ohio?
Well, I'll tell you, probably largely like they are in Tennessee and otherwise around the United States. Appreciate you having me. Wonderful to be with you guys here today. And live auctions aren't supposed to be happening in Ohio. Most of the United States, I think they said 90% of people are to shelter in place or not leave their home. I'm not sure that's happening, but that's what's supposed to be happening. And I see some indication that maybe this pandemic is starting to lighten up a little bit or turn, get on the other side of that hump, if you will. So that was good news that I ran across this morning. So we got a long way to go. And auctioneers here in Ohio are having auctions, online auctions, I think almost exclusively. I think we're pretty much on the same page and getting by. I think that's maybe what everybody's trying to do, just get by till things get back to normal, kind of our topic here today. What is normal?
Yeah, our governor in the state of Tennessee seems to be a few days behind. We all just got emails this morning from our regulatory board, the Auctioneers Commission, and they spell it out pretty much in black and white. No on-site auctions of any kind while we have this current mandate going on. Shane, you got the email. What exactly did you get out of that from the state?
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because it just came out, but I think the three of us and the larger population of the auction community kind of already knew this. I think it's a little ridiculous that they actually had to come out and put it in black and white. But ultimately, within the state of Tennessee, it even said online auctions are okay. Obviously, because it does not, it doesn't interfere with the mandate of the social distancing, no more than 10 people. So, I think we're kind of in a holding pattern other than online only auctions and really having an orchestrated pickup, delivery, shipping plan in place. The future of live auctions within the next 30 days in Tennessee, I think looks very similar to they do today, just non-existent.
Mike, in Ohio, is real estate still essential or are realtors shut down as well?
No, exempt them or make them essential, essentially. So in Ohio, in my market here, they can still open houses are somewhat restricted in terms of number. I think Shane mentioned 10 or so. They don't let any more than a certain number into that open house at the same time, but they can still list property. They can still put it in contract. They can close. We were doing a lot of virtual closings in, maybe everywhere here lately up till then. So the real estate activity is one of the exemptions to the you got to stay home.
That's awesome. Well, now we know how things are in Ohio. Let's jump right to it. So you've got an auction school in Ohio, and some people know you through that. A lot of people know you for the last decade. You have been very active on the internet with your blog and your blog post. I don't know the name of it, but I know how to go and find it because it has literally every topic under the sun. Maybe I saw a YouTube video where you started that in 2009. Is that correct?
That's correct. Sitting here in Columbus, Ohio in November of 2009, not knowing anything about WordPress. That's the platform I use. Incidentally, WordPress underpins about 36% of the entire internet. So everybody on earth has been on a WordPress site already today, if not numerous times, because essentially every third site you go to is underneath that. The undercarriage of that site is a WordPress platform. So I started in 2009, November 2009, publishing, and just one article led to the next, to the next, to the next. And pretty soon started getting phone calls and people saying, hey, can you help me with this? Or attorneys, to some extent, calling and saying, hey, we got a case, we got an issue. You seem like the guy. You've written about that. Can you help?
Anybody can start a blog, obviously. You've just been, you have been committed to it for a decade. What would you say have been some of the topics that have gotten you the most response from the public, not necessarily auctioneers?
Public largely wants to know two things. How do auctioneers get paid? And what in the hell are they saying when they bid call? What's those other words inside there? I wrote about both those things, and those two topics routinely every day get the most traffic, unless it's just maybe a current issue such as the price gouging in Texas or whatever that kind of takes over, or the coronavirus that I wrote about had a lot of hits that day. But then when you return to normal, they want to know, how do auctioneers get paid, and what are they saying?
Yeah, I think those are two good topics. Now, far as auctioneers, there's sometimes I have seen, since I have been following you on Facebook, you can post a blog topic that I think everybody gets behind. And then there's other times you can speak your opinion and it gets a divide, and people will go to their grave fighting you on your opinion. What's been unique? What unique things have you seen far as when you have put down a divisive opinion and the response you've gotten from auctioneers?
I think the most contentious issues here lately, or maybe the last 5 years, if that's lately, have been that we can write our terms, conditions, contracts, all that to be entirely seller favorable. And my argument has been, if it's all seller favorable, we can withdraw items. We can refuse your bid. You can't retract your bid. We can say as is, and then we can lie about the item. Oh, well, you should have looked at it. You should have paid attention. I think what that does when we're trying to be all seller favorable is it discourages bidders from participating. And as soon as you have bidders not participating, you're not helping your seller, you're injuring your seller. And so in courts, when I've been in courtrooms discussing equity and reasonableness and balance in terms, conditions, things like that, oftentimes judges perk up, juries perk up and say, you know what, that kind of makes sense. It's got to be a little bit for the buyer, a little bit for the seller. It can't be all one side or the other. And I'll tell you, Jay, on Facebook or otherwise, that seems to get the most pushback. No, wait a minute. It's my auction. It's my way or the highway, and I'm going to have it how I want, and the hell with the buyers. Well, the hell with the buyers. You say that to an extreme, you're not going to have any buyers.
I agree with that 100%. Something that I remember you have said in the past in a blog or online is that you find it to be absolutely unacceptable or inappropriate for auctioneers to extend different terms to different buyers based on needs. Hey, I've got a buyer that might give a little bit more, but they can't put down the 10% deposit. They can only put down $10,000, or they need 45 days where everybody else has a blanket, 30-day close period.
Right.
I know what I've been told at certain schools, and I've read your opinion. What are your thoughts on that, extending different terms to different buyers in the crowd?
Well, I've certainly written about it. Great question. It's been litigated. If we have time, I'll tell you about the particular case I was involved in, which was that exact issue. But here's what I think auctioneers can do and can't do. I think you can set up terms that say, for example, I need $25,000 down day of auction. You got to register with a driver's license. You got to sign the terms and conditions. That's the requirement to bid here today. Or we played high school football together back in the 90s. That could be your ahead of time preset terms and conditions. We either played high school football together, or I need a check, a driver's license, and a signature. See, those are done in advance. So bidders can decide, okay, I played football with Mike, so no problem. And by the way, I didn't play football, as you can probably guess. I can register without the driver's license, or I've got a driver's license and a check, and I got a pen, and I'll sign it. The problem is capricious, arbitrary, post-auction or post-registration for that auction. So I say, for example, I need $25,000. I need you to sign, and I need a driver's license. And some guy walks up and says, I don't have $25,000. I don't have a driver's license. And the auctioneer says, well, give it a Well, if you're going to give that guy a number, what's this other bidder over here going to say? Well, wait a minute. Why did you need a driver's license from me? You didn't get a driver's license from him. Why did you need $25,000 from me? You didn't get $25,000 from him. And I'm going to bid against him. He's going to bid against me. He didn't meet the terms and conditions. So the opportunity to have, I have held and I've seen in the courts, if you set terms and conditions ahead of time, addressing different ways to register, that's fine. But don't wait till the day of the auction and then suddenly change the registration and expect other bidders to understand that, because they're not going to understand.
Good point. Shane, you got any questions? If we're not operating on too much of a delay in Adams again. The internet's slow up there where Shane's at. We'll give him a minute or two. He's going to hop in if I go on with another question.
Yeah.
I know what my question is. I've already got a couple of them ready to go. I don't remember when you posted about this, but the topic was. He's going to hop in if I go on with another question. But the question that I got for you was saying advertising minimum bid. This may have been on the podcast you did years ago, but just saying, hey, it's a possibility that you could advertise your starting bid or your minimum bid because more people could possibly come to the auction. I think it was on the Talking Fast podcast. It may have been on the podcast you did years ago, but just saying, hey, it's a possibility that you could advertise your starting.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I'm not sure if I think I'm still alive here.
Yes, you are.
Good deal. But yeah, so basically you recommended that throwing that out there as an option where you could advertise your starting bid and maybe more people would come to the auction. Has your opinion changed on that, or have you ever tried that since you talked about it on the podcast?
I become even more convinced. More disclosure, more openness, more here's what it is going to attract more bidders. Auctioneers and their sellers benefit from what? Maximize the crowd. Get as many people plugged in, as many people registered. Let's get it on. We got 600 people registered online. We got 1,000 people in our crowd. What's that going to do? It's going to help our client. It's going to help our seller. So how do we get those people? I think the answer is you give them more information. So we could pretend there's two situations. Jay, you call and say, what's the minimum bid on that real estate auction coming up? And I say, well, I can't tell you. Well, what's the least they'll take? I mean, I don't want to waste my time. If it's reasonable, I'll play. If it's not reasonable, I'm going to shop elsewhere. Well, he hadn't decided yet. Or we're not going to tell you. Well, what are you going to do, Jay? I think you're going to go somewhere else and shop. And every other shopping experience, where else do you go? Minus maybe a car dealer, where you can't get the price. You don't go to Walmart and not get the price. Prices on Amazon, prices on eBay. Prices are everywhere. Every store, they stick a price on it. So I think we attract people with more disclosure, more openness, more honesty. Here's the minimum bid. It's a $200,000 house. The minimum bid's $100,000. If it brings $100,000 or more, it's going to sell. I think, Jay, Shane, I think you guys would participate. Buy a $200,000 house for $100,000. But I think this, I'm not going to tell you. Or I'm not going to show you my cards, or we're going to wait and see, or we're going to do seller confirmation. I think that deters bidders. I think that tells bidders shop somewhere else.
I'm scared to advertise any kind of minimum or reserve because in Tennessee we don't have to do that. Yeah. The reserve is always between you and the seller, but I think you've got a valid point, and I'd love to try to figure out if, in fact, because what you say makes perfect sense to me. And I can't argue that at all, other than I've never tried it that way. But obviously, we try to take things that aren't being sold with reserve, but sometimes we have to. So the theme here was the future of auctions, and I know realistically we can't predict what that's going to be. But what do you think we can do to give our buyers a more experience when they come to an auction?
Well, and talking about the future of live auctions, given that a lot of auctioneers have experienced online now, maybe hadn't tried online before, but now they're trying it now. And where's the online auction in the future? Where's the live auction in the future? I think any auction that's not an event ought to be online, quite frankly. Auctions that are events, there's food, there's seating, there's music, there's I can buy a jacket, I can get a hat, I can check on my neighbors or friends or whatever. If it's an event, I think that's a great application of a live auction. There's more than just the auction. But if I got an auction where there's no music, no chairs, no entertainment, no products, nothing else, I think we've probably seen auctioneers look at that and say, well, you know what, that could be an online auction. We're not doing anything else in the live auction. Live auction is any different than online in that case. So, Barrett Jackson or Meekum or Phasic Tipton or Ritchie Brothers, are some of those auctions events? I think you could argue they are. Sotheby's, Christie's, events, I think will survive. I think we're just selling stuff. I think you're going to see a lot of that online, and maybe it should be online.
Shane?
I think the lights are linked back up. Can you guys hear me now?
There you are.
No?
Somewhat.
Hello?
It's actually pretty good, Shane.
You got me now?
Yeah. Got a question?
Mike, can you hear me?
I can.
I watched you. I watched him. I watched you teach this live, and I don't remember what association it was, but you guys were actually streaming the education live.
Streaming education live. I think maybe one of the states had a class and they had a camera or a phone or a Facebook feed or what have you going at the same time. Could be that we've had some of those telecasts. I'm not sure.
Shane, I can actually hear you at the moment. We may just have a long delay getting it to Clarksville, which is a nice place to live.
Mike, can you hear me?
I did hear that. Yes. Yes.
We're probably going to lose him here. He's given up. That's all right, though. We are here. Go. It's your floor, man. Take it. He's got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody's getting sued or somebody's upset. What are some of the topics you go in as an expert witness on the most?
I would say the typical case involves some sort of, if it's I guess there's two types. There's ones where I'm helping the auctioneer. And what drives that? We got an unhappy seller or an unhappy buyer. Buyer doesn't feel like they were treated fair or reasonably. Seller doesn't feel like they were treated fair or reasonably. Wasn't advertised, didn't do a good job, what have you. Those are fairly straightforward because if the auctioneer did everything they're supposed to do, I represent that auctioneer and we're all good. When it's against an auctioneer, typically we see these kinds of issues. Running the bid. And I don't mean a little bit, I mean a lot. And I don't mean on small stuff, I mean on $1 million stuff. Taking a bidder in a case, from $5 million up to $25 million with no other bidder there. Well, she finds out that there's no other bidder there. The property's selling absolute, which means the seller can't bid. There's no reserve, but we're running it from $5 million to $25 million. She's upset and she has a right to be upset. So the judge, I'm on the witness stand. Judge says, tell me, Mike, show me. The judge actually asked me, he said, show me what you keep saying, running the bid. Show me how you do that. And I said, Your Honor, you're on at $5 million. $6 million, $7 million, $8 million, $9 million, $10 million. He said, who's this other bidder? I said, there isn't one. He said, oh, is that what happened here? I said, that's what happened here. With reserve auction, seller bidding, that's all good. Disclosed, that's all good. Absolute auction, pretending the seller is bidding, or online platforms. We had one with online platform taking bids through a false ID or what have you to get the price up, but pretending or holding out that it was a legitimate bidder when it wasn't a legitimate bidder. Quite frankly, Jay, I see a lot of that. And as I may have mentioned here lately, live auction, there's very little evidence. You might have somebody with their phone, or it might be recorded or what have you. Online, holy cow. You can subpoena all the records. You can see all the bids. You can see, and the platform will turn it over if they're subpoenaed. A court document says, hey, you got to produce records. They're going to produce it. Man, if I was going to run the bid, I sure as hell wouldn't be doing it online, because there's all the evidence. So that's one. The other that we see sometimes is people holding themselves, and I think every auctioneer needs to be careful here, holding yourself out as an expert, or somebody that does, we sell artwork, or we sell horses, or we sell cars. We're car experts, but not really experts. And they don't get that price. And how do people discover that, well, the auctioneer didn't quite represent their prowess or wheelhouse appropriately? Well, the property sells 3 weeks later for 10 times that in another auction house. And the seller says, wait a minute, I thought you were the expert on that stuff. I think we hesitate to refer stuff to other auctioneers. That really isn't our thing. This guy's better. I think we hesitate to do that. And if we did more of that, I think people would start to trust us better to say, okay, yes, this is something I'm really good at. And however, I'm not particularly good at this. Maybe this auction house in Texas is better at selling that or this.
I find a lot of times that just a little bit of communication can resolve a lot of problems. Do you find that to be true, or are some of these cases we're going to court hell or high water?
Well, it's hard to sue over, $5,000, $10,000. You get these $1 million cases, 10 million, 72.5 million, for example. You get that magnitude of case. People have money and they're going to sue, and they want compensated. They want to feel better, and they want to feel better at your expense. They want you to pay them money so they feel better. It gets right down to it. Better communication, absolutely. Too many times, Jay, auctioneers, they're all talk, they're all communication until they get the contract signed, and then you never hear from them again. They disappear, and then the property sells for $2 million. They thought it was going to sell for $6 million, and they call them up and say, "Well, we sold it $2 million. I thought we were going to get $6 million." Well, we didn't. We just didn't get there. Well, that's not the time to tell somebody their $6 million house is only worth $2 million, or house they think is worth $6 million is worth $2 million. Better to have that discussion before you even book the auction. As you say, good communication up front can save a lot of these problems. Absolutely.
So right now we're all sitting at home, no live auctions in Ohio or Tennessee. We're all doing our online auctions. What do you think an auctioneer can do? I'll finish up with this, where they can better themselves in their profession and in their own company.
I think it boils down to the thought, or having the thought, that buyers have choices. I can go to Walmart, I can go to Amazon, I can go to eBay, I used to be able to go to a store and buy something. I don't have to come to your auction. They don't have to come to my auction. They can buy it somewhere else. So let's accurately describe items. Let's take online really good pictures, have adequate marketing to get the word out about the item, answer questions promptly when they email and say, hey, how big is that? Or does it run? Or can I see a picture of the back of it? Because I don't see a picture of the back of it, whatever. I mean, if you advertise it right, you market it right, you answer questions, you stay in touch with those bidders, give them an ample time to bid and participate, and a variety of ways to pay. I think we've done pretty much all we can. But and online right now gives people an opportunity to sharpen that knife, take better photography, maybe videos, advertising through Facebook and otherwise, getting the word out and better describing and prompt shipping, and don't gouge them on shipping and things like that. Because what do those bidders do? What do those buyers do? They come back. If you treat me right, I'm going to come back. You don't treat me right, I'm going to shop somewhere else.
I love that. That's great. I said that was my last question. Here's the last question. So all auctioneers are online. I think it's intriguing to hear your opinion. You're not afraid to speak, how you feel and believe. And it's good to hear that stuff. So in Tennessee, we've been facing a lot of government regulation and issues as far as online auctions being governed or not being governed. It all comes down to if it's a timed auction with a hard close or a soft close. What do you feel like realistically, does someone running an online auction, do you think they really need to be licensed, or why can't anybody do that? Why do you think there needs to be a license, or do you think there needs to be a license to operate in an online capacity?
Well, I would take your state of Tennessee, for example. You license live auctioneers. Let's see what you do. You sign a contract. You advertise the items, you collect all the funds, you put it in your trust account or escrow account, and 10 or 20 or 30 or whatever days later, you pay your client. What's an online auctioneer do? Book the auction, sell the items, collect the funds, and put that money in their trust account. Now, what happens if you, as a live auctioneer, Jay, don't pay your client? The state will protect that client or help protect that client. Mm-hmm. What if that online auctioneer doesn't pay their client? If you don't license online activity, state says you're on your own. We can't help you. Well, online guy's not doing anything different than you are. The only thing that changes, I think we tend to have this false narrative that online is just entirely different than live. The only thing that really changes is how we accept the bids and create those contracts. Otherwise, we still market, we still collect funds, we still disperse to our seller. And so I think in a state, to answer your question, I think in a state that licenses live auctioneers, it makes no sense to not license online auctioneers. I don't care if it's hard close or soft close. I don't see what's the difference? In a state that doesn't license live auctioneers, I can understand the not licensing online auctioneers because they don't even license live auctioneers. But I think if you've got one, I don't understand a state that has one and not the other. I guess that's maybe my answer.
I love it. Well, guess what? I got 2 texts for questions for you, so I'm going to do it just because I'm watching. One goes, ask about bonds. So I know what he's asking. I know what the text means. Of some states don't require licensing; they just require you to have a bond. What kind of protection do you feel like that gives versus true oversight where there's an auctioneers commission like we have here in Tennessee? I'm pretty sure Ohio's one state I'm not licensed in. We have 14 licenses, so I'm not in Ohio, but I am in certain states where I've got to have a $10,000 bond, or I'm not sure exactly. I just know I have to get them and get them renewed regularly. So what's the thinking there with the bond versus a commission to have oversight?
Yeah, I think there's merit to a state having jurisdiction over that. What Ohio has and some other states have are what's called a recovery fund. Many real estate licensing entities have recovery funds. So the state manages that money in their account. Client doesn't get paid, petitions the state has a hearing. They don't really have a dog in the race. In other words, they look at it kind of equitably or fairly and say, okay, yeah, you didn't get paid this $30,000, so we're going to pay you this $30,000. We're going to suspend the auctioneer's license and we're going to go after the auctioneer. See, I think with a bond, the public's arguing with an insurance company, and they do have a dog in the race. They don't want to pay anybody. Mm-hmm. So that's an uphill battle to collect on a bond, because the insurance company is going to say, well, that's not covered, or we can't pay out on that, or you're going to have to you'd have to get an attorney and argue about it. I think the state managed recovery fund, which serves the same purpose, is just easier for clients to make claims, easier for clients to participate in, probably cheaper for auctioneers instead of personally buying a bond for, $100, $200, $300 a year. Yep. State recovery fund. We have a recovery fund in Ohio. Doesn't cost you anything. It's included in your license fee.
Got it.
Whether it costs you anything or not, we could argue about that. But you pay it, but you don't pay an extra $200 or $300 certainly.
I understand. Can you really compare something that say Colorado, no license law of any kind? How can you compare that to Ohio or Tennessee, where we do have license laws? Because this is an age-old debate where we don't have these issues. Why do you make it so hard to come to your state to get a license? It's not fair. I'm just coming to do a benefit auction. This is absurd. Can you compare states, all 50 states, to be apples to apples, or are they different? And how are they different, do you think?
I think that's a fascinating question, because I don't get asked that enough. I'm sitting in the Indiana Capitol building a few years ago. Indiana had a bill pending to eliminate auction licensing in Indiana. Now, Indiana is a model of auctioneer licensing. The other states have borrowed Indiana's code almost verbatim to get their licensing done. Indiana is just a great license state, reasonable, customary, normal. People like it. Well, there's a bill to eliminate it. So one of these commissioners appointed by the governor said to me in the hearing, do you see any difference between licensed states and non-licensed states in terms of your work as an expert witness? And I said, well, I do. I would guess, Jay, the number is, I'm pretty sure it's about 90%. 90% of the time, when there's a really material big lawsuit about an auctioneer or about a complaint of some sort, and they go after the auctioneer or sue the auctioneer, guess where that is? Non-licensed state.
Oh, really?
Very few. If I don't remember the last one in a licensed state that I was involved in. And why is that? Because the licensed state, not only you have to take a test, you know that if you don't behave, you could lose your license. And third, you probably have to take CE. And what happens in a non-licensed state? You mentioned Colorado or Arizona or Kansas or wherever that don't have licenses. They don't, if you don't mandate CE, how many auctioneers show up for CE if you don't have to take it? Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lack of education. They're not around other auctioneers. They think they know everything because that's the way their dad did it. That's the way their uncle did it. Well, I think I think the biggest benefit to licensing, quite frankly, is the mandatory CE. And that tends to keep auctioneers out of trouble and protects clients better.
So if I heard you correctly, the expert witnesses, you think you are going to states that that have unlicensed activity is where you're seeing where you have testified, or what was that you just said? I just want to make sure I understood you, how you said that.
Well, when an attorney calls me and says, I'm representing an auctioneer, or we're going after an auctioneer, and they tell me what state they're in, about 90% of the time they're in a non-licensed state.
Wow. Interesting. All right. We've gone way over our 20 minutes. I promised you that we'd take. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get Shane back. He's texting me. I don't know what the problem is, but we enjoy doing this every day. We've got some great guests coming up soon. We've got our state champion, Drew Williams. He'll be on later this week. The last NAA IAC champion from Tennessee. He'll be on, I think, Thursday. So we've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. And we appreciate you being here, Mike, and we'll see you soon.
Jay, thank you for having me on. You take care of yourself.